So, if it isn't clear by this very creative intro I've done for this particular chat, let me explain to you this. I hate the sequel trilogy. And when I say I hate it, I really only enjoy The Force Awakens, and even that's kind of stretching it at this point. When it first came out, I did enjoy it, but later on, looking back at it, that's many times as I've seen it, it's almost a beat for beat reconstruction of A New Hope. And while some people may argue that's good, it does take away from originality and the enjoyment of it. There's so many open plot lines and threads that weren't ever picked up or ended with The Last Jedi because, well, Rian Johnson was pretty much given free reign to do whatever the hell he wanted, and he decided to butcher a lot of the old lore and the old canon. I mean, not that J.J. Abrams didn't either. And then the Rise of Skywalker, which is the dumbest name in the entire saga, pretty much tried to negate everything that Rian Johnson did so JJ could have his story, and it just was a mishmash, piss posh, whatever combination of shit you want to use. So when I say I hate it because this is where Star Wars crashed and burned, and honestly, it's going to have an extremely hard time to recover from. So when Disney purchased the rights to Lucas Films, Lucas Arts, and all that, including Star Wars, the games, the books, the comics, the TV show, it pretty much started to piss fans off immediately because they hired a whole board of, I'm not sure of their backgrounds, of they were fans of Star Wars or not, so I'm going to go with they probably didn't understand Star Wars as much as they claimed they did, especially when the head of this particular board that says what is and what isn't canon, aka official Star Wars. I think his name was Pablo Hidalgo. I could be extremely wrong. I'm not even bothering to look that up because I just don't like these guys. But they wiped out all canon, all history, except the movies and the CGI Clone Wars TV show. So basically all the books that came out, all the comics that came out, all the video games that came out immediately was erased from Star Wars history and put in the tab called Legends, or more or less kind of multiverse, alternate reality stuff. Which, some of it, yes, I agree, it got ridiculous towards the end. Like, extra galactical aliens coming and attacking the Star Wars galaxy were immune to the Force and I think lightsaber resistant. Cool in theory, but I think it was a little weird. It was definitely a left turn for some Star Wars stuff. And then after that, the Solo twins became the Sword and Shield of the Jedi, and Jason, the male twin, foresaw a greater threat coming and decided to go evil to ready the people for the coming threat. And the coming threat was named Aboleth, and she was from the Morris trilogy in the Clone Wars series, where she wasn't actually talked about, but she was basically once a human who tapped into like the pure sources of the Force and became this monster creature. And even at one point during that series of books, someone was able to, a crazed Jedi, mind you, driven insane by Aboleth, was able to knife hand a Mandalorian armor and not leave any markings, dent, or anything. Like, literally just stabbed like nothing was there, pulled out, and not a hole, not nothing. So I think at the end, the book series was starting to get a little ridiculous. So I'm not saying the old stuff is great or good, but it's definitely a lot better than what we have now in terms of content. But also the legends, as it's called, stuck more to the lore, and like hyperspace travel was very strict, and there were limitations and restrictions that they had to follow and didn't mess up. Characters were more developed, and just in general it made more sense. But now we have bad writers, bad editors, bad storytelling, movies that don't follow established, even following the movie canon, they don't follow the established movie canon or show canon. There was just, hey, we're going to slap the name Star Wars on this director's resume because this director has a vision of some sort. And I do believe that the head at the time, I don't know what's going on with this whole new setup, shake-up, whatever it is, Kathleen Kennedy, I do believe she wanted to have her message out there, which if it worked, it would have been fine, but her message was very clearly considered to be the woke agenda, where female empowerment by shoving or degrading men down, forced diversity, and I think I've talked about that before, but when you force diversity and don't make it seem organic or natural, it does take away from the quality of a film. Also, with the director J.J. Abrams, I heard through a source that he wanted to have an all-Asian cast for some unknown reason, but I don't blame the actors in any of this. They did what they could with all the materials they were given. So again, actors I don't have a problem with. It's the source material, it was the director, it was the writers, and all that. So going from there, I'm going to start with The Force Awakens. But yeah, basically Force Awakens is just a rehash of A New Hope, with obviously different characters and all that, and plot lines here and there. But essentially, a person from a desert planet, shocker, they love the desert planet so much. Basically, we learn that Luke Skywalker has gone missing for some reason. Jedi are once again gone. And there's pieces of a map to find Luke Skywalker. Now, the whole problem with that already is, if Luke went missing, why did he leave behind a map to be found? Like, if anyone was going to find him, it would have been his sister, it would have been Leia, it would have been Han. Like, him going, hey, something happened, I'm going away, don't tell anyone where I am. But no, he goes, I'm vanishing because something has happened to the Jedi, and I'm leaving clues of where I am. Introduced to the First Order, which is basically a shit knockoff of the Empire. Like, in the old canon, the Empire didn't change its name. It was still the Empire. Like, or Empire Remnants or something like that. Like, it made more sense than changing to the First Order. I don't know why J.J. Abrams thought that was a good name. Like, I liked the First Order at first, but obviously, as time went on, it was like, oh my god, these guys are shit. I don't mind the new designs, even though people make fun of it, saying it looks like Donald. Kylo Ren makes his entrance, and they tried so hard to make it like Darth Vader. But as good as Adam Driver is at doing an imposing figure behind the mask, it didn't seem imposing after. Just having a dude in a mask and a black suit doesn't make you intimidating. Even with your impressive force powers, it's just like, okay, you're not Vader. You're not going to be Vader, so stop trying to be pretending to be Vader, no matter what your beliefs are. And again, don't get me wrong, I actually like the way Kylo Ren looks. It's very interesting. I like the lightsaber, how it's not traditional style. But as an imposing character, especially after The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, it's just like, it's the fear factor, the intimidation factor, it's all gone. Like, he's just this antsy wannabe. And it's just, it makes me so sad that they destroyed his character right after the first movie. Poe Dameron we're introduced to, who's supposed to be an X-Wing pilot for the Resistance. And again, that's such a stupid name. Because you have to read the books to understand why they're called the Resistance, but at the same time, the books do a shitty explanation of why it's called Resistance, because at the time, they're not resisting anything. They're not even rebelling against anything. It's the New Republic didn't want to chase rumors of a reemergence of the Empire because they felt it was a waste of resources. So Leia, after she dropped her title of princess and senator, became General Organa again, and just said, hey, we're the Resistance now, and took a contingent of New Republic pilots to become the Resistance. So in a sense, she formed a faction within the military that took away from the military. So in a sense, she could actually be considered a traitor. But yeah, the names are so bad in this series, and I'm not a guy who comes up with good names for his own stories. Like, it took me 2 years to come up with a female character name for one of my stories. Villain names, one of them is literally just Shadow. So it's like, I'm not an expert in naming, but god damn, the faction names of this series, it's so ridiculous. But Poe gets captured to be interrogated as his droid, the BB-8, Basketball 8, has the part of the map to find Luke as the droid escapes, and Poe's like, oh, I'll distract them, BB-8, you run, you roll away. And the way BB-8 rolled, literally Poe could have gone with him and nothing would have changed, really, because the whole village was slaughtered. The only difference would have been Poe wasn't captured. Because if he hadn't shot anyone, no one would have noticed him. This is also where we're introduced to Finn, the stormtrooper who later leaves the First Order to help Poe and Rey out. Rey's introduction is that she's a scavenger trying to make a living just to survive. And she lives in a AT-AT skeleton. Meaning there was a war, there was a battle over Jakku. And again, so much is explained in the books that came out after the movies and explains these characters a lot better. Now, normally that wouldn't be a problem, but the problem is Finn, a stormtrooper conditioned from birth, suddenly has a snapping moment within the battle in the beginning of the movie, and it's like, oh no, something's wrong. I don't feel. Oh, I need to switch sides. I no longer believe in the First Order. Because if you're conditioned from birth to believe in something, why is one of your squad mates getting shot? Suddenly the thing that makes you go, oh shit, I'm on the wrong side. Because even in the books, it's a shit explanation. It's, he was the best, yeah, he was the best stormtrooper ever. Yay. Which is weird, but during a mission, he suddenly starts having doubts. And again, if you're conditioned from childhood, why 20 years later are you suddenly having doubts about your command? And again, I think it's just there was no set plan apart from making more Star Wars movies. I could be very wrong, obviously, but from the onset, after I watched The Force Awakens and started trying to get more into the new lore, I was vastly disappointed. Even the explanation of how Rey later was able to fly the Millennium Falcon was disappointing, just in the fact that she somehow had a flight simulator tucked away in her AT-AT when it looked like she barely was able to afford food to survive, but she somehow got a flight simulator. And even if it was an old flight simulator, why would it have, I don't know, what was it, 20 different styles of ships? So she suddenly knew how to fly ships because of a flight simulator. I don't know, it's just a poor execution on Disney's part of not coming up with better explanations. Like, they could have said she was trained by pilots, not by a simulator. Like, I know in the real world, people have said, oh, well, I got my flight license through Microsoft Flight Simulator. But I think spaceships are a little more complicated than airplanes. Especially like the Millennium Falcon, where you have a cockpit on one side, the other side is a radar dish. So, Poe gets captured by Kylo. Kylo senses something's wrong with Finn, or I actually don't remember his freaking number. I don't care at this point. FN 20187, I think it is. Which is how Poe later comes up with his name, Finn. So creative. Poe gets captured, interrogated, so we're shown Kylo is definitely strong in the Force, especially after he stopped a blast bolt. Introduced to General Hux, who I'm going to be clear, I liked a lot of characters in The Force Awakens. It's afterwards they destroyed all the characters, and it's like, okay, I don't like these guys anymore. Like General Hux, I thought he was going to be the new version of Tarkin. No nonsense, very tactical person. And he was, for the quick moments he was on there. Yeah, Rey finds and rescues BB-8, decides to keep him. Interesting fact in the story, in the novelization, yes, I did read that, and it was much better than the movie. The novelization said, actually had Rey consider selling BB-8. She even turned him off to shut him up. And last minute, she decided that, no, that's actually not a good idea. So, yeah, they took away a lot of the characteristics I think would have made her more human, I guess, less robotic, or made her seem too perfect. Like, if they just showed she truly considered selling BB-8 instead of grabbing a pile of whatever preservatives, reserves, whatever the food was, and then she stopped and go, you know what? I'm an angel. So, I think the books did a much better job than what J.J. Abrams did. But yeah, Finn and Poe escape, and then we're given the impression Poe died in the crash after the TIE fighter that Poe and Finn were in got shot down, because why wouldn't it, from a Star Destroyer? And Finn should have known, well, shit, we probably should do a much better job of escaping. And Poe's like, oh, we don't take out these turrets, we're going to get shot down anyway. And yeah, they take out the turrets, but they wasted so much time. So Finn lands on Jakku, where Rey is. Well, where everyone is at this point. There's even a scene where the Resistance pick up that the First Order are there, and there's a consideration of attempting to go there. No, actually, no. Not yet, actually. Rey and Finn meet because BB-8's like, hey, he stole my master's jacket. Oh, well, Poe's dead. Oh, droid's sad. And a fight ensues with the stormtroopers trying to capture Rey and Finn. They escape on the Millennium Falcon. Of course, Rey knows how to fly perfectly, as I said, and Finn takes out the fighters. And after a quick argument, we're shown Kylo Ren is not emotionally stable because he lashes out when he finds out that Finn escaped, or the BB unit escaped with Finn. And then there was a girl. The scene is hilarious. I recommend watching just that one scene. Millennium Falcon is captured by Han Solo and Chewie. Yay, go figure. And I was excited to see Han and Chewie again because, I mean, they're from the original trilogy. And I was thinking, oh, well, they might be very important. Well, they might bring some levity to the movie. And honestly, while Harrison Ford was good as Han, and obviously Chewie, Peter Mayhew, good as Chewie, it still felt disappointing in just the execution. I don't know, it didn't feel like Han and Chewie again. It felt like, oh, slight parodies of the actual characters. I mean, there's not much you can do when you're, Harrison's got to be, 50s, 60s at this point. So he's a little stiff. But it's definitely, it doesn't feel like he was really in it. And I heard reports that he didn't want to be in it. And after the movie was over, he no longer had to worry about being in it for obvious reasons. But the Millennium Falcon gets almost taken over. not the Millennium Falcon, whatever ship Han is in with some weird creature, Rathkor, Rancor, whatever it's called, Rathars. They use a very... I loved when they announced that these particular actors for Kanji Club, whatever the fuck it's called, were announced. It's like, oh my god, I love these guys. They were in an awesome movie called Raid Redemption. I recommend seeing that undubbed. Watch it in the original language, because they are very good choreographed fighters. And like I said, the movie that they were in, that Raid, was simplistic story, but the fighting scenes were awesome. And I was like, oh my god, they got these guys to potentially be Sith fighters or something like that, where the choreographing lightsaber fights would be awesome. They might have even been the Knights of Ren that they had announced were going to be in the show, or in the movie. I was like, ooh, this should be really interesting. No, they relegated to some talking lines and running away. Like, such a disappointment at what they were. But Han, Chewie, Finn, and Rey escape with the droid and the map. And Han is recognized by Rey as the famous smuggler, where Poe's like, what, Han Solo the general? Which would have made more sense, because if you're a famous smuggler, you're not doing a very good job of being a smuggler. I forget who originally said that or whatever, but it's true. I mean, if you're more known for being a smuggler instead of the guy who helped save the entire fucking galaxy, then you've done something wrong. They do the whole Han is so happy to be back in the Millennium Falcon. He smiles. He's like, oh, I'm back home. And he notices some changes, and Rey is like, oh yeah, I noticed these changes too. I argued with whatever his name was, and they both say what the problem is, and it's like, oh, well, she knows this ship inside and out. Ooh, yay. She's so smart. So yeah, Han is more known for being a smuggler than he is for saving the galaxy, and Rey's never believed that the Jedi were a real thing, even though this is 30 years later, and the Jedi would still be talked about and considered not a myth or a legend, because that would be hundreds of years, not 30. But apparently that's all it takes is 30 years to become myth or legends. It's weird. It's just a timeline where it's like, something that happened 30 years ago was my birth. That's not a myth or a legend. I was born 30 years ago, and okay, sure. It's just like, I kind of ignored it at first, because being from a desert planet in the middle of goddamn nowhere, as everyone keeps saying. And, I mean, but looking at it, it's still only 30 years. She was on the planet where where the books describe the last major battle of the Republic and the Empire took place. I'm pretty sure the word of Jedi, the name of Jedi, and what they did to help bring down the Empire would have been mentioned. But Han confirms myth and legends were real, everything was real, everything happened. Like, they're children, they don't know jack shit. And they're going to a world where one of his contacts would know how to get the information to the Resistance and to Leia. Because apparently he doesn't want to do it himself, because he's a little bitch boy now. We quickly find out that General Hux and Kylo Ren are being led by a being named Snoke, Supreme Leader Snoke. And once again, I liked the idea of Snoke, of what he was. Very clearly a powerful Force user. Used a hologram height to intimidate people. And even Kylo Ren seemed afraid of him and respected him. And very clunkingly, Snoke goes, the droid is now in the hands of Han Solo, your father. And it's like, you could have just said in the hands of your father. And that we would have been like, oh shit. But no, they gotta say, no, it's in the hands of Han Solo, your father. Just kind of like, why you putting so much emphasis on that? So, yeah, it's just more unnecessary dialogue, information, poor writing. I mean, you could have repeated later where it was like, say, have Snoke say in the hands of your father, and a couple scenes later say, we were running away from my son. You could have had Han say that, and it would have been like, oh, okay. I mean, it's not like we wouldn't have known when Snoke said in the hands of your father, because there's only one person we've met that would have been old enough to be Kylo Ren's father. But whatever. So they go to the planet where you meet a character named Maz Kanata, who does appear in the other movies. This seems to be the more important one for everyone. This is where we find out Han and Leia aren't seeing each other for some unknown reason. Finn admits to Rey was a stormtrooper, but wants to run away because he's afraid of the First Order. Luke's lightsaber from Cloud City is somehow in the hands of Maz Kanata. We find this out after the First Order attacks the place they're at because they were sold out. And I don't think they ever explained it. At least not. They definitely didn't explain it in any of the movies. And I haven't even bothered reading any of the books at this point because it's so disappointed. Do I keep saying that? I'm pretty sure I keep saying I'm disappointed in this whole thing. First Order attacks. Finn defeats another one of his squad members in a pretty lame fight, but he uses Luke's lightsaber, which could have been an awesome twist if it turned out Finn was potentially a Jedi. That goes nowhere because Rey ends up being captured because she wants BB to escape, and she leads stormtroopers away, and of course Kylo Ren finds her and takes her hostage because she's seen the map, therefore they don't need the droid anymore. And my question is, I don't care how clear is a mental image for a map like that. Like, it's just a piece of a map. It's not a complete map. I'm sure someone could have used it, but the problem is it's still a mental image. Is it going to be perfectly remembered? Anyway, the Resistance comes, saves Han, Finn, and Chewie with Poe. Fun fact, Poe actually was supposed to die, and Oscar Isaac was like, hey, don't kill me, please. I'm tired of dying. Which turned out probably to be the best choice he's ever made. He lucked out on that one. Leia makes her introduction, and there's an awkward scene with Han and Leia like meeting each other for the first time again. C-3PO shows his face, and he has a red arm for some reason. I think in the book it's just literally explained as he lost his arm and got a new one. So it's like, why does this matter? Han clunkily says, I saw him, Leia, I saw our son. Like that again, that could have been a fine point making instead of having Snoke go in the hands of your father, Han Solo, to someone who already knows who his fucking father is. The Resistance uses Finn to make plans to attack the Starkiller base, which is a literal planet sized Death Star. Like, they carved out a planet. Uses its core to destroy systems. And in this case, we see it destroy the New Republic's capital system, which is 5 planets. And bear with me on this one. The Starkiller base makes 0 sense. One, it's a fucking planet. It's a literal fucking planet. So they had to dig out the planet, dig out the planet's core, put in whatever mechanisms they needed to put in, and have it not implode, explode, whatever, within the course of 30 years, if we're being generous. I mean, I know they built the Death Star within 10, but that was an entirely mechanical thing. You're talking about digging out a planet, a literal... Then there's the weapon itself. It has to be powered up by a star, like the sun. And I'm not kidding. They literally show, when they're going to destroy the resistance base, them pulling a star into the planet's core to power the laser. How do you do that? If it's a planet, you're going to have and if you're going to do that, you have to have engines that move it. And I'm sure, unless the planet is like completely reinforced and made stable for movement like that, you're not moving a planet. Because it already fired once. Where did it get the energy the first time? I mean, it makes no sense. And then 2, in the book, is described as a hyperspace laser. Meaning, when fired, it can go through hyperspace like a ship to its destination. How? You can't just say, hey, laser, go to hyperspace. And still not waste its energy. And then 3, it splits. It fucking splits into 5 different beams. Into worlds that are still arguably too close to each other on a system. Like, in our own solar system, the planets are light years apart. So it's just... The Starkiller base, as cool as it is, J.J. Abrams, whoever the writers were as well, didn't think that one through. You don't have to have a planet-destroying super weapon in every movie. Like, I know in the Legends they kind of did with this Death Star, not whatever the Imperial fleet had. I forget what the particular class was called, but they had Death Star technology on those as well. Why can I not think of the ship's names? Anyway, it's like in the Rise of Skywalker, those ships, like, they actually had those in Legends, but they weren't a fleet. I don't think they were a fleet. I think it was like 1 or 2, because of the sheer amount of resources it took. And I remember part of the series I read, they had a place called Centerpoint Station from Cornelia, because there was a small rebellion from there. They had that station could alter the gravity of any planet. And it's just, I don't know, it's just, I think it got to the point where it's like, okay, we can stop trying to make super weapons with everything. Because I know for movies, especially long-winded movies, they love to one-up each other, like one up the next. Like, look at the Fast and Furious. They're running out of ideas, so the last one, they literally went to space with a car. But I think just having Starkiller Base as a potential threat, like, they don't have to show it could destroy an entire system. Just have Finn go, well, here's what it can do, and explain. Like, that probably would have been a little bit better. But no, we have to see what it does and then not have any explanations on how it moves or why or whatever. Well, they could have said, well, it is the old kyber crystal planet Ilium, and they're using these kyber crystals for secret projects, and we need to either take the First Order out and hold the base, or because they're using it, like having a giant mining machine, we need to destroy the machine or something like that. Like, it could have been much more simple, but they have to keep one-upping each other. They make the plan, and in order to initiate the attack, Han, Finn, all go to the Starkiller base, but they can't just fly into the Starkiller base because there's a planet-wide force field that prevents anything from entering that isn't going light speed. Or I would assume have codes to enter the planet, because that would be stupid for the First Order to have that and not be able to deactivate it if there weren't any codes. And they could have said, well, we try getting codes, but they're recycled every, 2 hours or something like that. They could have said something other than, oh, well, it prevents anything from entering that isn't going light speed. Because this is the first instance of where they break the canon for light speed. Because even in Rebels, even in the old Legends, if you're near a mass of gravity, you cannot be in light speed. That's why they have a certain class of Star Destroyers. That's the ship name I was thinking. You have a certain class of Star Destroyers that can create gravity wells that literally pull ships out of hyperspace. That's a thing in both non-canon and canon. So I'm going to assume they're saying Starkiller Base doesn't have any fucking gravity, despite the fact that it clearly has fucking gravity. Sorry, you can tell I'm a little frustrated, right? So they almost crash land into the planet. Oh, shocker. Because they come out of light speed right in front of a cliff. God, this movie didn't piss me off at first, but now it pisses me off. I'll watch it more than the other two movies for sure, but this is just the start of how bad it gets. So Rey is going to be interrogated, but Kylo, being suddenly weird because there's a girl there, gets taunted to take off his helmet because she says, "You're nothing but a monster under that mask." He takes it off, and all intimidation factor is gone, because he could have just said, "I am a monster, and watch me do this," and interrogated her. No, he's got to take the helmet off and put the helmet in some sort of coal pit. And I didn't know this at first, and this is the one thing I regret learning, but the coal pit is actually the ashes and remains of his slain enemies. Let that sink in. He has a pile of dead people's bodies, the remains, for him to stick his helmet on. Just sitting there. Yeah, that's totally a Sith thing to do. Yeah. When he's interrogating her without his mask on, he digs into her mind and senses something there, and in the movie, she just suddenly gets force powers and is like, "You'll never be like Darth Vader," and he's like, "Oh no, my deepest fear." And then he goes running to Snoke saying she's been trained in the Force. In the book, however, it says there was a wall there. Like, in her mind, there was a wall hiding or holding something back, and Kylo broke the wall. That could have been a very good subplot to explore, or even mention in the movie, where it's like I was probing her mind and I breached something that let the Force out, or she remembered that she had been trained before. This doesn't come back at all in either of the movies, sequels. But Snoke pretty much says, bring her to me, I will break her, or I will begin her training, or something like that. Rey then uses the Jedi mind trick to free herself through a stormtrooper. Which, if you're leaving a stormtrooper in there, why not leave multiple stormtroopers, especially given the importance of the prisoner? And people love to point this out, that the stormtrooper that she tricked was Daniel Craig, and everyone made the joke that he's FN 007. I think that was a wasted cameo, but that's basically every cameo in the series. They had Tom Hardy as one of the stormtroopers in The Last Jedi, and that was completely wasted. Like I said earlier, the actors from The Raid were wasted in terms of their potential. There was just a lot of wasted potential, a lot of wasted talent. But yeah, Rey escapes. Finn and Han eventually run into her while evading everyone. And they have a plan to blow up the shield generator. Sorry, they don't have a plan to blow up the shield generator. They have a plan to shut it down, which includes using Captain Phasma, who was introduced a couple of times as a captain of the First Order in very shiny silver armor, where it's just like, I have silver armor, therefore I'm important. And she doesn't do jack shit except get intimidated by Finn when she's in blaster-proof armor. So that makes sense. And she becomes a traitor by shutting down the shields, which makes no sense, because if she's so dedicated to the First Order, she would have just died for her cause. But we learn in the books, and I kind of learned via summaries of the books, because like I said, I had no vested interest in this stuff anymore. She's extremely selfish, and she's only worried about making herself look good, which again makes no sense, because if you're the one outed as shutting down the shields, your character is destroyed and you're considered a traitor. So Captain Phasma was a terrible addition. Every preview and every interview, the actress playing her said, oh, she's the next Boba Fett. She's the next Boba Fett. Well, next Boba Fett means all of 3 lines, and then you die. Or you appear in all 3 movies, have all of 3 lines, or you're just standing there looking intimidating, and then you die. So, we're going to have the book of Captain Phasma next. Anywho, shields are shut down. The Resistance begins their version of the Death Star attack. And yes, they actually include a very short trench run. But Han and Finn see that the attacks on the power coupling core thingy isn't going so well. So they make a plan to help them with basically C4 explosives, which after the C4 blows up basically just makes a crack that Poe gets in and destroys stuff. And there's issues with that. Simply the size of the port, I don't think would be big enough for a X-Wing fighter, and it going in circles unless they're going at a speed that doesn't allow them to stay airborne. But as Han and Chewie are planning the explosives, because Finn and Rey are elsewhere somehow, they run into Kylo Ren, and they say Han yells his real name, Ben, and Ben just goes, Han Solo. Han tries to convince him to come back to him and Leia, in a very lovingly manner, where Harrison looks very bored and tired and just wants to get the hell out of there. And can't tell if it was genuine, where he's like, I don't know what to do, please help me. And then he starts to handle his lightsaber over to Han. And metaphorically, the last beam of the sunlight is shining through the crack, or a window or doorway or whatever. And then literally as the sun disappears and it becomes all dark, that's when Kylo looks up, reactivates his lightsaber, and kills Han. And as cheap as I feel that death is, it does have an impact. One, because you just killed a fucking legacy character, one of the most beloved characters in all of Star Wars, in a very unceremoniously way. Two characters who have known him for all of, a day, are the ones that have the biggest reactions of him being killed. You have Chewie crying and attempting to kill Kylo, but even then that just felt very cheap and not good enough for someone who just watched his best friend get murdered by his son. They cut to Leia, and she's having a reaction, and it's a little more, I think a little bit better, because she has she can't say anything, she just sits down looking broken. So I think that's a little bit better, but the way Chewie reacted, I would have thought he would have gone more on a rampage than he did. Kylo's mortally injured, but he doesn't die, obviously, because everyone knows when you get shot in your side where your liver is, you can survive. He chases Poe and, Finn and Rey through the forest. Rey gets knocked out. Finn starts to beat up Kylo, and it's like, this actually might be where Poe shows he could be a Jedi, but nope. He gets his ass kicked, drops Luke's lightsaber, and as Kylo is trying to pick up the lightsaber with the Force, he can't, and then it flies past his head, and it shows Rey holding it. And obviously, it being Rey, she beats Kylo, who's been trained by two different masters in the ways of lightsaber combat and the Force, and she suddenly has the skills to use a sword and the Force, despite the fact that we know she doesn't know how to use a sword. She knows how to use a staff, and for anyone who says those skills can translate or transfer over, they do not. Not at all. And we, in this movie, have no evidence of her being able to use the Force minus Jedi mind trick. But, nope, because she's Rey and she's the main character, she can do everything perfectly. I mean, even Luke had trouble using the Force, and he was trained for a couple of hours. So it's just like, oh, well, I'm going to make Rey perfect in every way. She can beat master or trained combatants at their own game. So Rey's about to kill Kylo, but a giant crack from the planet being destroyed separates them, and Rey goes back to goes back to Finn, has a cry. The Millennium Falcon shows up, and both of them get off the world with the remaining Resistance members. And we're never shown Kylo or even General Hux getting off the planet. We just shown General Hux being told by Snoke to get Kylo, get off the world, and we'll complete Kylo's training. Yeah, well, in the book it says that Hux had planted a tracker on Kylo just in case of emergencies, and they didn't even bother trying to show that in the movie, because why would they? So Rey, Chewie, and Finn get back to the Resistance base, and here's the fun part. Everyone goes to Finn because he needs medical attention. Leia and Chewie literally walk past each other, and Leia just pats Chewie on the arm. I'll repeat that. Leia, the wife of the best friend of the being she just walked past, pats Chewie on the arm, goes to Rey and gives her a hug. Not Chewie, who is now languishing in depression that his best friend just got murdered by his son. She hugs Rey, who's known Han all of a couple of hours or a day. Because God forbid you hug your best friend's, your husband's best friend. It's just like, oh my God, do we really give it that much of a shit about Rey? No, we give a shit more about the legacy characters, but no, we gotta make the new characters better than the legacy characters. So after the hug, R2-D2 wakes up. Yay, we have all the old character. Oh, wait. R2-D2 has the last part of the map that was missing to find Luke, which is just essentially the entire galaxy map minus this one little section. So it's not as if no one could have put 2 and 2 together, like another map that of the galaxy that I'm sure any other pilot would have had, and go, okay, I recognize this system, I recognize this one, I recognize this one. Why don't we just kind of match them together? But no, apparently the planet Luke is hiding out is so remote and so unknown, despite the fact that we learn that it's actually the first Jedi temple. Therefore, it probably would have been a known planet on a known system. But no. Instead of Leia going to talk to her brother, they send Rey. Again, instead of sending Leia to convince her brother to return, they send Rey. Yeah. So, just in case you can't tell, this is just the first movie. And I've already gone way over an hour ranting about it. And this is the one I like the most. Just because I'm complaining about this more than the prequel and the originals doesn't mean I don't have my issues with the prequels and originals. I have my issues with both, with all the sagas. The problem is the Disney series was overhyped, overdone, and just advertised to all living hell because it's Disney and they gotta advertise it out of every orifice that you... Like, I know the advertising for the prequels was extensive, but I don't think it got to the level that Disney does. I could be wrong, because obviously I'm looking at the prequels with my rose-tinted glasses, even though I'm not. So, the Force Awakens ends with Rey meeting Luke and attempting to hand back his lightsaber. And The Last Jedi picks up pretty much immediately right afterwards.